Owen Hart's fatal fall shocked the world in real time. And while Bruiser Brody's stabbing became one of the most controversial unsolved cases in wrestling history, together they prove one thing: in this business, danger is not always part of the act. In this video, I will break down 10 WWE legends who were killed on camera, starting with Owen Hart and the Blue Blazers' final descent. On the night of May 23, 1999, more than 18,000 fans packed into Kemp Arena in Kansas City, Missouri, completely unaware they were about to witness one of the most tragic moments in sports entertainment history. Owen Hart, a beloved 34-year-old performer, was scheduled to descend from the rafters as his comedic superhero character, the Blue Blazer. The stunt was meant to be lighthearted, with Owen lowered from roughly 78 feet in the air, pretending to get stuck in his harness before jokingly releasing himself and falling face-first onto the mat. It was classic Owen, the prankster, the family man, the guy who could make anyone laugh even during serious moments. But something went horribly wrong. The harness system used a snap shackle normally designed for sailboats, equipment never meant for a dangerous stunt like this. As Owen sat hidden in the darkness of the rafters, adjusting his cape, the quick-release mechanism activated too soon. In a split second, the man who had entertained millions was falling straight down with nothing to stop him. He landed chest first on the top rope, suffering massive blunt force trauma that tore his aorta. Viewers at home were spared the sight because a pre-recorded video package was airing at that exact moment, but the fans in the arena saw everything. They heard the gasps, the screams, and watched as chaos erupted and EMTs rushed the ring. Owen Hart was pronounced dead shortly after being taken to the hospital. What happened next remains controversial to this day, as Vince McMahon chose to continue the show, a decision some wrestlers defended as respecting Owen's dedication, while his family viewed it as deeply insensitive. A wrongful death lawsuit followed and was settled in 2000 for $18 million. And Owen's widow, Martha Hart, later turned her grief into purpose by creating the Owen Hart Foundation, which provides scholarships and housing for families in need. But she has firmly refused any WWE Hall of Fame induction, and her relationship with the company remains broken to this day. Owen's death showed the world how one failed stunt could turn a normal performance into an unimaginable tragedy. But what happens when the danger isn't on live television? When it happens quietly, far from the spotlight? That question takes us to a wrestling school in California and a young trainee named Brian Ong. A case known as Brian Ong and the Great Khali. Not every wrestling death happens in front of screaming fans or TV cameras. Some happen inside small training gyms where dreams are built and sometimes destroyed. And Brian Ong's death in 2001 is one of those tragedies, a story that would follow the Great Khali for the rest of his career. Brian was a 27-year-old aspiring wrestler from Berkeley, California, who worked as a file clerk during the day while chasing his wrestling dreams at night. He admired high-flying wrestlers like Sabu and enrolled in All Pro Wrestling's boot camp in Hayward, paying $6,000 to train under experienced professionals. What his trainers didn't know was that Brian had a history of concussions from his karate background, injuries he kept secret because he feared they would end his chances before they even began. On May 28, 2001, Brian was paired with Dalit Singh Rana, later known as the Great Khali, to practice a flapjack move. Khali stood over 7 feet tall and weighed nearly 400 pounds, a massive presence who himself had less than 6 months of wrestling training. During the drill, Brian grabbed Khali's shirt, throwing off the timing of the move, and instead of landing flat on his back, his tailbone hit the mat first, snapping his head back with force. Trainer Vince Principato later recalled that on the second attempt, Brian grabbed Khali's shirt again. His tailbone struck first once more and his head whipped back violently. Yet no one immediately realized how serious it was. Brian soon complained of dizziness, then began vomiting, and moments later he collapsed, turning a routine training exercise into a fatal chain of events. He was pronounced dead at St. Rose Hospital from acute subdural bleeding, and the aftermath was devastating for everyone involved. Brian Ong's family sued All Pro Wrestling for negligence, and in 2005 a jury awarded them $1.3 million in damages. But Dalit Singh Rana, later known as the Great Khali, was cleared of all responsibility. Investigators concluded that Khali had performed the same move correctly with other trainees that day, and that Brian's mistake in grabbing his shirt combined with his undisclosed history of concussions, led to the fatal result. Khali would go on to have a successful WWE career, winning the World Heavyweight Championship in 2007 and being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2021. But the weight of Bryan's death never truly left him. In a 2015 interview, Khali said it felt horrible, but asked what he could have done. Bryan's story revealed the hidden dangers that exist even in training ranks. But the next tragedy was not an accident at all. It was the complete unraveling of a man once considered one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. The dark and horrifying downfall of Chris Benoit. There is no name in professional wrestling that carries more conflict, horror, and tragedy than Chris Benoit. A man who for more than 2 decades was respected as one of the greatest technical wrestlers to ever step into the ring, winning world championships across the globe and earning the trust of everyone he worked with. Then, over one terrifying weekend in June 2007, Chris Benoit became something else entirely. On June 22, 2007, inside his home in Fayetteville, Georgia, Benoit tied up and strangled his wife Nancy, and the following day he sedated his 7-year-old son Daniel with Xanax before strangling him as well, placing Bibles near both bodies. On Sunday, June 24th, Benoit hanged himself in his home gym using a lat pull-down machine. The wrestling world was stunned. WWE initially aired a tribute show honoring his career before the full truth came out, but once the details emerged, the company erased Benoit from its history as if he had never existed. The investigation that followed tried to explain how this could happen, and the findings were deeply disturbing. Tests on Benoit's brain showed severe chronic traumatic encephalopathy, with damage comparable to that of an elderly Alzheimer's patient, caused by years of repeated head trauma from moves like his diving headbutt and countless chair shots. CTE does not excuse murder, and most people with brain damage never become violent, but the Benoit tragedy forced wrestling and sports as a whole to confront the brutal cost athletes sometimes pay. WWE responded with stricter concussion rules, banning chair shots to the head, and changing how performer safety was handled. Changes that echoed beyond wrestling and into wider discussions about head injuries in contact sports. Chris Benoit won more than 30 championships during his career, but his legacy will forever be defined by the tragedy that ended it. He main evented WrestleMania 20, and by every technical standard, he was one of the greatest wrestlers to ever step in the ring. But his legacy is permanently stained by actions that no level of athletic greatness can ever erase. He stands as a warning about the dangers of unchecked head trauma, about the inner demons that can consume even the most dedicated professionals, and about how thin the line can be between hero and monster. Benoit's actions shook wrestling to its core, and his story can never be separated from the death that broke him in ways he never recovered from. The next tragedy centers on a beloved performer whose heart simply could not keep fighting: the heartbreaking loss of Eddie Guerrero. Ask any wrestling fan who grew up in the early 2000s about Eddie Guerrero, and you will see a smile appear before it fades into sadness. Because Eddie was that rare performer who could make you laugh, make you cheer, and make you believe in redemption even while he was lying, cheating, and stealing his way to victory. Eduardo "Gory" Guerrero Lanes was born into wrestling royalty on October 9, 1967, in El Paso, Texas, the son of legendary Mexican wrestler Gory Guerrero. And Eddie followed the family path, debuting in 1987 and working across Mexico, Japan, and the United States before becoming a worldwide star in WWE. His journey was far from easy, as he battled addiction for years and survived multiple overdoses before 2001, but he fought his way back, got sober, and turned his struggles into some of the most powerful storytelling wrestling had ever seen. His emotional WWE Championship win over Brock Lesnar at No Way Out 2004 remains one of the most powerful underdog moments in wrestling history, a real-life comeback that fans never forgot. The match footage involving Misawa was never officially released out of respect for him and his family, and his July 4, 2009 memorial drew more than 26,000 mourners to Ryogoku Kokugaken, including longtime rivals who carried his casket, sparking renewed conversations about safety in wrestling that continue today, cementing his legacy as both a symbol of greatness and sacrifice. Another tragic loss came years later with Silver King, when on May 11, 2019, fans packed the Roundhouse in Camden, London for an event promoted as the greatest show of Lucha Libre, expecting masks, fearless dives, and legendary names. including Cesar Cuauhtémoc González Barron, the man known to the world as Silver King. Born on January 9, 1968, in Torreon, Mexico, Silver King came from true wrestling royalty. His father, Dr. Wagner, was a legendary luchador, and his brother, Dr. Wagner Jr., remains one of the biggest stars in Mexican wrestling today. Silver King carved his own path through major promotions like CMLL, AAA, WCW, and New Japan Pro Wrestling, winning multiple championships and even appearing as the villain Ramses in the 2006 comedy film Nacho Libre alongside Jack Black. At 51 years old, he was still active, still traveling the world, and still sharing his love for Lucha Libre with new generations of fans. His opponent that night in London was Juventud Guerrera, another respected veteran, and video footage of the match later spread widely online, capturing the tragic sequence. Silver King hit a jumping clothesline, went for a pin that Juventud kicked out of, and then something was clearly wrong. He lay flat on the mat, struggling to breathe, one arm hanging lifelessly. Juventud tried to engage him and spoke to him briefly, while the referee urged the match to continue. Because in Lucha Libre, selling injuries is part of the performance, and no one immediately realized this was real. When Silver King did not respond, Juventud kicked him lightly on the shoulder to get a reaction, but there was nothing. By the time the match was stopped, valuable minutes had already passed. CPR was attempted, but Silver King was pronounced dead at the scene from cardiac arrest. An autopsy later revealed severe heart infection along with underlying heart disease and high blood pressure. And although a coroner's inquest ruled the death natural, it also criticized serious safety failures. Not long before this, on November 13, 2005, Eddie Guerrero was found unresponsive in a Minneapolis hotel room by his nephew Chavo while in town for a WWE taping, having worked until the very end. The official cause of death was acute heart failure caused by cardiovascular disease, linked to years of steroid use and past substance abuse that had enlarged his heart and damaged his arteries, and Eddie was just 38 years old. His widow Vicky later reflected that it was his past, the drinking and drugs, that caught up to him, as doctors found clear signs of heart disease. WWE honored Eddie with emotional tribute episodes of Raw and SmackDown, complete with a 10-bell salute and tearful memories from co-workers who saw him as family. And he was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2006. Eddie Guerrero was a WWE champion, a Triple Crown champion, and one of the most charismatic performers the industry ever produced. But more than any title, his legacy is one of redemption, proof that no matter how far someone falls, they can still fight their way back. Nearly 2 decades later, fans still chant Viva La Raza, a testament to the love Eddie earned and the inspiration he continues to give. Eddie's death shook fans across the world, but he was not the only veteran whose body gave out after decades in the ring. Because the next story follows an old-school brawler who died doing what he loved. Moondog Spot. Larry Wayne Booker was never a mainstream superstar, but to fans of old-school Southern wrestling, he was unforgettable. As Moondog Spot, he stalked the ring with wild hair, ragged clothes, and a giant bone, a crazed outsider who helped shape the future of hardcore wrestling. And born on June 6, 1952, in Louisiana, Booker trained under Herb Welch and made his debut in 1977. His early career saw him form partnerships that later became legendary, including the Blonde Bombers with Wayne Ferris, who would go on to fame as the Honky Tonk Man, and together they took part in the infamous Two Below concession stand brawl against Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee on June 15, 1979, a wild, bloody fight that spilled into